Why doesn't my body cooperate? Even when my heart wants to, even when I love my partner, even when I want to want it. And here's what I've learned. This question really isn't about desire. It isn't about libido. And trust me, it is not about effort. We wouldn't even be having this conversation. They would have figured it out because that's just who my people are. I think that this comes down to safety. Welcome to the Intimate Philosopher, where philosophy meets intimacy and life's biggest questions finally feel at home. I'm Dr. Emma Smith. I'm a licensed professional counselor, certified sex therapist, and existential philosophy nerd, inviting you to join me for an after-hours conversation. This is a space to slow down, pour a glass of wine, or maybe a cup of tea, and explore the messy, beautiful intersections of meaning, connection, desire, and being fully human. This is the place for real conversations about the parts of life that don't fit neatly into a box. So, grab your glass, get comfy, and let's dive in. Hi, friends. Okay, so today I'm going to do something a little bit different. Today I want to do something that I think is going to be called my 2 a.m. episodes. And the reason I'm calling it my 2 a.m. episodes is because these are some of the questions that I get asked over and over again. And if, I go on a girls' trip, most of the time, these are the questions that are happening at 2 a.m. So I want you to imagine we're on a trip and we've just come back from dinner and get back to the house that we've rented, and somebody is opening up another bottle of wine and somebody else is getting cozy on the couch. And this is when we start actually spilling the tea. So here's the question. And, people use different words. It occurs in different rooms. I think that different women will ask me about it, but it does seem to have this universal quality to it. And basically, the question can come out like, is something wrong with me? Or sometimes it's, desire used to feel easier. I used to be able to get turned on by my partner. Where did it go? And sometimes it's even framed more, I don't know, almost like a confessional of, I don't think I feel the way I'm supposed to feel. And every version of that question is basically saying the same thing or asking the same thing. What it's asking is, why doesn't my body cooperate? Even when my heart wants to, even when I love my partner, even when I want to want it. And here's what I've learned, both as a clinician and also as a woman living inside a body of my own. This question really isn't about desire or our ability to feel desire. It isn't about libido. And trust me, it is not about effort, because the women that I work with, the people who are in my circles, if it was about effort, if it was about muscling through anything, the problem would be resolved. We wouldn't even be having this conversation. They would have figured it out, because that's just who my people are. I think that this comes down to safety. And I don't mean pure physical safety. I think that when I say safety, people automatically think, oh, abuse. And no, safety is more than that. It can be, yes, physical safety, but also relational safety and cultural safety, and being able to show up emotionally and being able to not be shamed for the things that we want or the things that we like, the feelings and the sensations that feel good, that kind of safety. And so once you understand that, I think the entire conversation about intimacy really gets to shift into something else. And that shift is important because desire really can't bloom in spaces where it has to monitor for safety. Desire and safety, they either need to coexist together or they're going to be at odds with each other. And think about it. You can't fake relaxation. You can't intellectualize trust. You can give a whole list of reasons why you should trust somebody, but actually feeling trust for someone or trust in a relationship, that can't really be forced. And before the mind can make sense of anything, the body is lightning fast picking up and responding to the cues of the setting and who and what's around us. It responds to tone and timing, to proximity, and to energy. I mean, think about maybe the last time that you were supposed to hang out with somebody and you thought, ugh, maybe I don't want to go. Like, I'm tired. It's cold. I've had a long week, whatever the thing was. But you ended up going. And when you got to see that other person, it was like every cell in your body just exhaled and it felt so good that you could just be with this person and feel rejuvenated when you left. That idea of presence and being with someone. And, on the flip side, when it feels off and you can't explain why, well, your body still may tense or your breath shifts, maybe your jaw tightens, maybe your body leans in out of curiosity of like trying to figure it out, or maybe it pulls back in kind of bracing and holding space for itself. And for some of us, we would call that intuition. It's really actually more neuroscience at this point, but I still like the word intuition. So you will hear me use that from time to time. I think that it's less about denying that neuroscience exists and more about leaving space for the magic and the mystery of being alive and being human and experiencing this ability to sense in our environment. I mean, that's so freaking cool. Think about it. Every touch, every tone, every look sends a message to the nervous system, and it's answering the questions, am I safe? Am I seen? Am I allowed to be fully myself here? And until the answer is yes, intimacy doesn't really unfold because your body is wise. It's not because you're broken. It's because your body's doing what it's meant to do, regardless of whether or not it is going to be easier or preserve somebody else's feelings if you could just force your way through it. So let me set the framing a little bit here. Today, we're really talking about the foundation of intimacy, not chemistry, not compatibility, but it's another C word. It's co-regulation. Co-regulation is basically how two nervous systems learn how to dance together and how safety is felt, not the promises that people make, not the stories that we tell, but actually how it's felt. And then also how desire can emerge out of that. And desire really can't be forced. Again, there's a difference between performance and emergence. So what we're talking about is the emergence kind, and that is when we feel safe, the body can naturally open. And when we don't, it guards and it braces, even if our words say otherwise. Even if we're saying, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, it's not fine. So today, we're exploring what safety feels like in the body and why that's a doorway to being truly seen and deeply desired and able to tap into your own sense maybe even more importantly, tapping into your own sense of deep, fulfilling desire. Before we dive in any deeper, a quick note. If you're enjoying these conversations, I think you will love my newsletter, The Inner Circle. It's a letter for souls who crave connection and thoughtful reflection. And it's intimate, it's real, and it is never spammy. So you can sign up at soliloquy.co/vault. That's SOLILOQUIE.co/vault. Don't worry, it's in the show notes. And sign up. And then I'll see you over there as well. Okay, let's get back to what we were talking about. So, I want to talk a little bit more about something that I think our culture gets really wrong. And I want to see what you think about this. Safety is often positioned as the opposite of passion. There's this idea of safety being vanilla. And I don't think that safety is the opposite of passion at all. I think that safety actually can allow passion to exist, especially in long-term relationships. And for most bodies, desire doesn't open up in anxiety and pressure and vigilance. The nervous system can't really relax into pleasure when it's busy defending itself. And that's not a mindset issue. I think that's a nervous system regulation issue. And when the body perceives a threat, even a subtle threat, our muscles brace, our breath shortens, and our attention narrows, and exploration shuts down. Now, one of the things that's really interesting here is that for some reason, we have this idea that threats only exist with new people. And I think that's where, in that context, when we're talking about safety, yeah, it really often is physical safety. Going out on a date, sometimes people will ask me, oh, what's the difference between dating women and dating men? And I will sometimes joke, although I'm kind of half serious, that one of the biggest differences I noticed when I first went out with a woman on a date is that I didn't worry about being murdered on my first date. I just went and had a good time. So in long-term relationships, I think people think that if your relationship can last long enough, that somehow that means it's automatically safe. And that's not true, because here's what ends up happening is that when you start to care what somebody thinks of you, that can persist long past our first, second, third dates and well into committed relationships and even marriage. And so when your body perceives a threat, it can be a threat of judgment. Exploration can shut down. And yeah, some people will confuse anxiety with arousal, especially if intensity is the closest thing to connection that they experienced early on. But for most of us, sustained desire requires something quieter first. It really does need those deeper roots. It requires presence. It requires permission. And it requires that safety in the sense of non-judgment, of full welcoming in. And on that note, I think it might be helpful to tell a story here, because this conversation isn't just theoretical for me. Several years ago, I found myself back in a spicy, intimate encounter with someone who I had been involved with in the past. And by that point in my life, I genuinely believed I had done my work, that I had spent years, not only in therapy, but also in deep self-reflection, getting to know my body, unwriting all of these really rigid rules around things like sex and desire, and having a better handle on what my boundaries were. I really thought that I was owning my sexuality and fully embodied. I thought I was free. And then suddenly, with this person who I know, suddenly I wasn't. I was there, but I was very unsure how to move. My body felt constrained, awkward, not quite frozen. That feels like a bridge too far, but it was like I couldn't figure out what I wanted or how to be in the moment. There's a term we use in psychotherapy called spectatoring, which is kind of where it's not like like a full dissociation where you're seeing yourself from a third party point of view, but almost in this heady running commentary about what you're doing, and you're being judgy to yourself even in that moment. And so it was so weird. And like I said, it was like I had been transported to a much younger, much more awkward version of myself. I wasn't trusting my instincts. My body felt tight. It felt performative. I just wasn't in the experience. And later, as I was reflecting on what the fuck actually just happened, I realized that a lot of my attention was on whether or not I was going to be judged by this person. And I was tracking how I was being perceived in the moment instead of tracking how I felt about this experience or whether or not it was pleasurable. My body couldn't relax into the sensation because it didn't feel safe to be seen in that level of vulnerability by this person. And that moment clarified something for me with absolute exquisite precision. I will never again put myself into a situation where I believe that someone will be critical of me at my most vulnerable and exposed. And not just because it doesn't feel good, but because it erased my experience entirely. I couldn't even tell you how that felt because I was so caught up in this whole other thing. What's even worth doing at that point? And that wasn't a libido issue. That was fine. I think it was a safety issue. My body wasn't failing me. It was everything in my being trying to protect me. So what's going on here? Well, we have to talk a little bit about attachment. And attachment theory, it really isn't just about psychology. I think we talk about that a lot, but there really is a strong biological component to it. From our earliest relationships, our nervous systems learn what closeness feels like and what it costs. And so when we feel emotionally safe, there's this kind of bonding chemistry. Oxytocin becomes more available, and stress hormones tend to soften. Breath deepens. It's like the body becomes more coherent. And you can see this with children when a baby settles into their parent's chest. You can also feel it if two people reconnect after conflict, and that part of that reconnection has this physical component to it. I do this exercise with some of my couples where they will hug, and it's this 2-minute hug. And everybody feels ridiculous when they're doing it, but they hug and their breathing naturally starts to regulate. And although I don't have biofeedback monitors or anything, they say that your blood pressure and your pulse rate will start to match the other person. And what you can see, even without any measurement, is that people's bodies will relax. You'll watch their shoulders drop. So all of this tension that they've been holding will melt away. And so I think that's so fascinating to watch people finally exhale together. But again, when safety hasn't been consistent, your body's going to adapt. And this is where some of the attachment stuff comes in, right? So Some of us will adapt by reaching and by chasing reassurance, and they really crave closeness and contact. And that might be your folks who have a more anxious style. And then some people, like your girl here, will adapt by pulling away, by maintaining distance and autonomy and control. And that's more of your avoidance style. And these aren't flaws. These are strategies that your body and your nervous system learned at really early ages, specifically for your survival. Each one, regardless of whether or not you are somebody who leans towards or pulls away, each one is the nervous system of that individual saying, I'm afraid I won't have my needs met. And I think that part of our healing work is to stop pathologizing those patterns and realizing that they were designed to do a certain thing. And it's not like we just let it go without challenging it or nurturing it into a more healthy version in adulthood. But they are doing exactly what they were designed to do. And I just think that that is so important. And one day we'll have to talk more about how, while you do have a certain calibration, you're not condemned to that pattern for the rest of your life. That's a whole other episode. We'll have to get to at some point. Okay, so let's talk about erotic regulation. So in the therapy room, this is what I spend most of my time talking to people about, is how connection itself can recalibrate your nervous system. And I have to tell you, I'm thinking of a couple clients as I say this, and I'll use one in particular, but I have to say that even when I say a client or this person, I'm really talking about many people. I mean, I've been doing this for 14 years at this point almost. And so if I'm bringing it to you, it's not because I had one conversation with one person one time. It's because I have had many conversations with many people many times, to the point where I go, oh, maybe this would be interesting to talk about on the podcast, because it seems like a conversation I keep having with people. So I just want to throw that out there. Nobody wants to hear their story told on a podcast by their therapist. I know I sure as hell wouldn't. So I do not do that. This is just, it's easier to tell the story as if it's one person instead of 15. So most recently, someone came in and they said, they were convinced. And this seems to be happening more in the South now, but it did happen when I was practicing on the East Coast too. Convinced that there was something fundamentally wrong with her. And she told me, I have lost the ability to be turned on. And the language matters. And so in this description, there's words like prude or broken, or sometimes people even say asexual, which, by the way, asexuality is a real thing. There was something else going on here. And as we talked, it very quickly started to emerge this different picture. I mean, she loved reading romance novels. She listened to erotica and had fantasies about other men. When she traveled with her girlfriends, she dressed differently, she moved differently, and she felt more alive. Now, she was not acting on it with anybody, but it was pretty undeniable that this woman was more sensual and more embodied when she was away from her home than when she was there. And that's when something clicked. We ended up talking and it was like, I don't think your desire's gone. And we talked a little bit more. And what we realized is that the problem was that the kind of sex that she believed she was allowed to want, that was possible in her relationship, and that was okay to ask for, wasn't the kind of sex that her body enjoyed. And her nervous system knew it. And so one of the things that was happening is that she was trying to force herself into having this kind of experience that she didn't want and didn't particularly like. And so guess what? It's not abnormal to not want what you don't like. And so what her body didn't experience as safe or pleasurable or enlivening, yeah, no, you're not going to want that. I mean, same with anything else, right? I don't like salmon. On 0 days in my entire life have I ever craved salmon. Have I ever eaten salmon? Yes. Why? Because people tell me it's good for me. But do I crave it? Do I enjoy it? Do I like it? No. Same for anything else. And so nothing in the sense of her brokenness needed to be fixed. What needed to change were the conditions and the context in which she was asking herself to be able to perform and show up. And so how do you do that when you're not automatically ready to have this conversation with your partner? Well, you can start with slower things and things that are outside of the bedroom. You can start by making eye contact with somebody that you trust, allowing your nervous system, particularly the ventral vagal system, to come online and allow it to signal safety and social engagement. If you have a partner who is willing and you can breathe together, your nervous systems can begin to coordinate and the rhythm can soften and your ability to be present can deepen with that person. One of the reasons that this is actually really important is because there's even been some studies, don't worry, I'll put them in the show notes, where neural patterns become more coordinated during moments of really deep connection. And so I think this is actually really cool because what it means in part is that desire isn't something that we have to chase. It is something that can arise. And when bodies feel safe enough to play, because you know that I've said that sex is play for adults, but when bodies feel safe enough to play, that allows desire to step into the room. And that's why I think it's actually really important that foreplay doesn't just start in the bedroom and why we can't imagine it only starting in the bedroom, because it really technically starts with your nervous system and you take your nervous system everywhere you go. Hi, friends. If the Intimate Philosopher is resonating with you, I would love it so much for you to share this episode or leave a review. It helps more people discover conversations that invite them back into their own aliveness. So, if you share, especially on Instagram, please make sure to tag me at Emma Smith, PhD. I would love to connect with you. Let's dive back in. You know, as we're wrapping up today, I have to say this whole concept of safety, it's not sterile. It is really deeply, deliciously sensual. And if you feel safe, or should I say, when you feel safe, I think you can feel this. Your laughter changes. Your breath, it deepens. And your desire can shift from being dormant and just kind of masked in performance to something that is full of playful curiosity. Really, what safety says is, hi, all of you is welcome here. Come on in. And for that matter, while we're at it, you know, I think being seen says, I notice you, the real you, and I like you. And desire says, I want you. This is the kind of intimacy and desire that can heal. And not because it's perfect, it's because it's two people showing up, committed to being present for one another. So, if desire has felt distant or complicated, I want you to hear this clearly. It doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. It may mean that your body is waiting for the conditions it needs to open. And that's not failure. That's wisdom. So you don't need to force desire to return. You just need to stop abandoning the signals that your body has been sending all along about what it needs. And remember, safety isn't the end of eroticism. For a lot of people, it can be the beginning. You might consider, by the way, if you're vibing with this episode, you might consider sharing this with the person who you want to have more erotic and intimate experiences with, because it would probably be really helpful for them to hear it and to hear all of this and hear that it's not about them either. And that it really is about learning how to move together and explore and create the conditions where that exploration can happen together. Okay, I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me for this after hours conversation. If something in today's episode made you pause, get curious, or see yourself a little more clearly, share it with a friend and keep that conversation going. Until next time, keep exploring that messy, beautiful space between meaning and being human. I'll see you next time.